Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. In our first video, the crazy couple decided that being in a wheelchair is a privilege. Well, I don't think our OP agrees with that. We'll tell you more right after a short pause. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Entitled parents called me privileged for using a disabled space. Some context. I, 18-year-old female, have a heart condition and a hip condition. I have to use a wheelchair to get around. I can walk, but only for a short distance before I either get tired or my hips start hurting. Now, pre-COVID, my parents and I were traveling by train for a hospital trip. Just a checkup, nothing serious. I was sitting in the disabled space in my wheelchair, which had a small table and lots of space so I could get out easily. My parents were sitting on the seats beside me, reading magazines and playing games on their phones. I plugged my headphones into my laptop and started watching a movie. This was when the entitled parents came in, with a ton of luggage and a pushchair in tow. The parents started filling up the space around and behind my chair with their luggage, and because I have social anxiety, I didn't know what to do or say. Worried that if I did say anything, it'd come off as rude, so I just sat there, panicking. Thankfully, my mom piped up and very politely said, "Excuse me, that's a wheelchair space. Please don't put your luggage there. My daughter won't be able to get out to use the WC or if there's an emergency." The mom complained that the bays are full, which wasn't true at all. There was an empty luggage bay very close by that they could have used. My mom explained that this isn't a luggage space, it's for a disabled person. The entitled parents, of course, ignored my mom, took their toddler out of the pushchair, and then proceeded to stuff the pushchair behind my wheelchair. My dad basically repeated what my mom had said, and the EM turned around and snapped. "Well, we have a small child in a pushchair. That's the same thing. We should be entitled to put our pushchair there." To which she was told, "We booked this space in advance, specially. We've paid for it. You've paid for your seats, and we've paid for this space." My dad followed this up by saying, "Imagine how you'd feel if I came along and dumped my luggage by your seats." They continued to argue with my parents until finally the train manager arrived, and it turned out they hadn't actually reserved seats at all, so they were asked to sit in the fold-down seats in the corridor with their luggage and pushchair. We thought it was the end of it, but we were wrong. They sat just the other side of the partition door, right in the view and earshot of us, and spent the entire hour and a half of the journey complaining about how disabled people are privileged and how we get everything we want, like luxury spaces on trains and close parking spaces. I just rolled my eyes. This is one of the many experiences I've had. My goodness, I'm so privileged. And our second story. How I learned to let go and love the time clock. Back in 2003, I was just starting out in the world after being in the Navy for 4 years. I was going to college and I got a job working the help desk at a local law firm. It was pretty chill. I was put on a salary and not hourly like many other people because I was expected to answer the phone at all hours. The deal was that I had to work around 40 hours a week and I could work them any way that worked for me. I'd stay late on days I didn't have school and would leave early on days I did. I always made sure that if I left early, I'd come in early as well. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't ripping this place off. The legal administrator was cool with it because she saw me get there when she got there each morning and knew I stayed late most days. Well, her assistant had a real problem with it. She would comment as I left on days I had school, "Must be nice to leave here at 2 p.m., or I'd get an email from her, "I came by your desk today, but since you're not here again, here's what I need." She really, really hated it. About 3 years into me working there, the legal admin found a new job and her assistant took her job. And you can bet her first order of business was to stop me from leaving early. She told me to stop doing it, so I went to the partners and told them what was going on. They sided with me and told her to let me leave early on the days I had class. She, of course, didn't just leave it at that. She realized I never clocked in and out. Since I was on salary, it wasn't required. She decided that I would need to move to hourly because I needed to clock in and out. The partners allowed her to move me to hourly because I was only making around $40,000 at the time, and they didn't care as long as the computers worked and I was happy I could go to school. She beamed as she told me I had to start clocking in and out. She was practically giddy when she told me I was no longer on salary. It was like her entire existence was tied to whether or not I clocked in or not. I just went about my business as usual and did exactly what she said. I clocked in every morning, I arrived early, and I clocked out when I left, even if I stayed until 10 p.m. If someone called me at home to help with their personal computer problems, I clocked in because I was helping a partner and clocked out when I was done. My first paycheck after she made me start clocking in and out came with 20 hours of overtime on it. I clearly didn't realize how much more than 40 hours I was working. She was livid. She told the partners that I must have been tricking the system because she saw me leave early on a couple of days and she wanted me fired for doing computer tricks. They looked over my sheet and saw that I was there most days at 6:30 a.m. and some days didn't leave until after 8. She was not too happy when they told her to leave me alone, and they also told me I could go back to salary. I told them that I was happy about getting the overtime. They agreed to let me stay hourly. I made about $15,000 more that year than I had in the past. I was super stoked about the extra money, and every time she handed me a paycheck, she'd give me the stink eye. And our next story. Karen tries to get me fired. When that doesn't work, she starts protesting me outside my place of work. This is a wild story. I'm honestly really upset about it. This Karen is something else. She's crazy and a true garbage human being. I work at a place that has a separate room where customers can do private business. It's got a separate entrance and is loaded with cameras. A customer complained that there was a woman in there smoking and on the phone. I went to the room, opened the door, and stayed at the entrance. I do this so I have an easy exit if the person attacks me. The room reeks of cigarettes. Here's our Karen. She, honest to God, looks like a Karen. The hair, glasses, she's short and stocky. She's got a cart of stuff, a dog in there, and she's on the phone loudly bitching to some poor soul on the other end. I say, "Excuse me, if you're not using this room for its intended purpose, you're going to have to leave." Karen yells at me, "Excuse me, I'm on the phone. Can't you see that? You're so rude." I tell her again she's going to have to leave. At this point, there's a line of 3 people waiting. Karen yells, "I'm disabled, and you're not letting me finish my phone call." This went on for like 10 minutes, but she was slowly gathering her things to leave. A nice lady waiting lost her patience and entered the room, told her to get out, and grabbed her cart. Karen loses her GD mind. She lashes out at the nice lady, starts yelling, "I've been assaulted! I've been assaulted!" She's screaming and yelling, collapsed on the floor. She's calling me a C word and to get the F out. She's saying she's going to call the cops for assault. I leave. The cops show up as they take statements, but this isn't the first time Karen's falsely accused someone of assault. You think end of story. Nope, this effing Karen phones into corporate crying, saying I assaulted her. I tried to take her service dog away from her, and she was going to hurt herself over how badly I treated her. The next day, I get a call from corporate security. I'm not worried. I know I did nothing wrong. Plus, the cameras in the room are in color with audio. Corporate reviews the video and ends up telling Karen that her behavior is unacceptable. Guess how Karen took that? She comes back the next day, enters the main building, and starts loudly calling for a manager. When that doesn't work, she starts yelling about the horrible Asian employee who attacked and assaulted her, and that she's going to stand outside to make sure everyone knows about it. So this Karen has been doing this for the last couple of weeks. She has nothing better to do with her life. She just protests me, telling everyone who'll listen about the evil Chinese lady attacking the poor disabled Karen. It's one of the most insane encounters I've ever had with one of the nastiest entitled Karens out there. It's straight up harassment and slander. I'm considering getting a lawyer at this point. Update. Last incident resulted in police taking Karen away. She's been admitted for mental health issues, and I haven't seen her since. And our last story.
So I'm at a cafe that is absolutely packed. As it's a public holiday and school holidays in Australia, it's one of the few businesses open in the small town, and there's only one table unoccupied, but it's been reserved. I've been sitting at the bar-like seats designed for single diners near the window. I head to the counter to pay and wait in line behind a family. It's a mom, EB, dad, D, and 2 kids. And you can tell from the way they're dressed they're tourists passing through. I hear EB start yelling at the cashier and tune in. "What do you mean there's no free tables?" "Sorry, ma'am, we get quite busy on public holidays. You're welcome to give me your name and number and I'll reserve the next open table." EB looks around the cafe and spots the reserve table. "Well, what about that one? That's free." "Unfortunately, that's already been reserved." The dad's obviously over it and tugs on his wife's arm. "We'll just find somewhere else." "No, they have a free table." She then storms over to the reserve table and sits down. "We'll eat here, thank you. Just give these people the next table." The cashier pokes her head into the kitchen and comes out with the owner. "Ma'am, I'm the owner. Unfortunately, you can't sit here. I've personally had this table reserved for 2 weeks." EB. "We will eat here, and then when your people come, they can wait for us to finish. We're here now." "This table's booked for 1 p.m., ma'am. You won't have time to eat." It was like 12:50 at the time. "We are paying customers." "I think the only other place to eat in town on this day will be less busy. They just opened at noon." The dad and 2 kids are still waiting in front of me, and eventually another cashier comes to the counter and asks them to move so she can serve me. I decide to get a coffee for the road so I can hear what happens. As I'm ordering, the fight continues between EB and O, and everyone in the cafe is listening. I stand near the takeaway coffee counter and keep listening too. As I settle in, a group of 3 people come in, a woman in her 30s, a man and a woman in their 60s, all dressed in alternative clothing, and the 2 women have dreadlocks. They go to the counter, and as it turns out, they are the ones with the reservation. The owner turns, sees them, and recognizes them. "The people who have this table reserved have arrived. You need to move immediately." EB looks at the group of people waiting and scoffs. "You've got to be effing kidding me. You're throwing us out for people like that?" "Excuse me?" "Look at them. They probably can't even pay. Effing hippies." Everyone is staring at this woman, especially because this is a vegan cafe and 85% of the people in the cafe look very similar. The owner goes red in the face. "Get out of my business now." "You chose nasty, smelly hippies over us? That is my wife and my parents you're talking about. Get out!" EB goes white and her face drops. The entire cafe is watching. But, out! EB slowly gets up and walks towards the door. As she's walking out, I hear the owner's mom say, "If you don't want to be around smelly hippies, I'd recommend effing off to the next town, love." The owner apologized to everyone for the disturbance, and the wife and parents sat down to eat.
Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.